Awesome, thank you. So good afternoon again. Thank you for joining today's session. The session today will highlight climate resilient rebuilding practices, the benefits of sustainable construction, and outline California's requirements for resilient and energy efficient rebuilding. I am Dominique D.T. Hall. I'm an associate director on the solutions team here at Enterprise Community Partners. I'll be leading today's session and will be joined by Araceli, Brian, and Sydney, who are supporting with the facilitation today as well. We are all based here in Southern California. However, Enterprise Community Partners is a national nonprofit that works across the United States to ensure families have a place to call home. The webinar today is being facilitated in collaboration with two key partners, the Center by Lendistry and Office. We are working collaboratively to support survivors as they navigate the rebuilding process. A part of this partnership, Enterprise has been hosting several interactive webinars. So if you are new to the webinar series, thank you for joining the webinar today. If you've been to some of the other webinars, thank you for continuing to join and attend the webinars. We've had a great few webinars so far. The first focused on really understanding your options as you are choosing your path forward with rebuilding. The second was on financing. Our last session was on prefabricated options and manufactured factory built. We had Foothill Catalog join us to talk about pre-approved plans, as well as we talked about ADUs. And so today's session is the fire resilience standards, as you know, and then we have two upcoming webinars. The next one will be focused on seniors, and then the other on mobile park manufactured homeowners and renters. And so if you have an opportunity to, please join us for those two upcoming, or share them with anyone that you know that may find this information very useful to them as they are rebuilding. If you want to revisit any of the recordings, we do have them online on our website, Enterprise's website, as well as on the LA Rebuild Hub. And I encourage you to review the materials. And we can go to the next slide. These webinars are made possible through the funders, these great funders here on the screen, US Bank and Wells Fargo, as well as BMO. And so thank you so much for your contributions in making these webinars possible. If you have any questions during today's webinar, please use the Q&A box. We will try to answer questions as best as possible throughout the webinar, and we will have a formal Q&A after every speaker, as well as towards the end of the webinar. Additionally, if translation is needed, please use the closed captioning button that can provide translation in over 30 languages. Again, the webinar today is being recorded, and all of the materials, as well as the PowerPoint, any resources shared, will be uploaded into the LA Rebuild Hub, and we will also be sending a recap following this webinar within a week or so. The LA Rebuild Hub is a website that just launched earlier this year that really serves as a centralized resource for individuals as they are rebuilding. So single-family homeowners, manufactured homeowners, renters, nonprofit partners. It has an array of resources to help you all navigate the rebuilding process. And just one final note that today's session is for informational purposes. This is a learning environment, but it should not be used for sales or promotional pitches. And so if you are here, representing your organization, please refrain from that, as we want this to be a space of learning today. And so thank you. I believe Brian just dropped the link to the LA Rebuild Hub in the chat. And so please visit that website to see and learn about all the great resources and continue to reference back to those. And another note, please note that the information shared today is for informational purposes only. This is general guidance and does not constitute any legal, financial, or insurance advice. We know that individual circumstances vary. And so please consult with a licensed professional, including contractors, insurance providers, to make sure that you are making the best decision for yourself as you are rebuilding. And so today's session It's really focusing on why fire resilient rebuilding requirements matter and how they shape safer, more sustainable communities. We will start the discussion with why rebuilding standards are important for long-term community safety and stability. From there, we will walk through California's key rebuilding requirements, including building codes and wildfire resilience standards that guide how homes are built. We will hear from 3 guest speakers today, including individuals from the Global Emergency Relief Recovery and Reconstruction Organization, the U.S. Green Building Council of California, and Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services Incorporated. These organizations will all speak on particular expertise to support resilient rebuilding. And so we can go ahead and get started. Really want to start our conversation today with the why. And so California climate change is really contributing to longer, more intense wildfire seasons here in California. And fire has become more persistent and widespread. Rather than, it was a time when there was a wildfire season. Now you can't really, say a particular time of the year is truly a wildfire season due to climate change. And the wildfires that happened in 2025 really underscore this fact. The Eaton and Palisades fires burned over 37,000 acres and destroyed over 16,000 structures across the 2 fire zones, the burn areas. And we know this will not be the last wildfire that will threaten our region. Disaster researchers describe this as the disaster continuum, meaning that mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery are not linear steps, but they are going to be ongoing cycles that our communities are going to be moving through on a constant basis. In this sense, we know that wildfires are not isolated events, but they're going to be repeating patterns that we need to plan for and make the necessary investments to make sure that we can protect ourselves and reduce the amount of destruction that these events, have on our communities and ensure the long-term stability as well as affordability of our communities and preserve what we love within our Southern California communities. When disasters occur, they lead to displacement, they increase insurance costs, and make it difficult for families to remain in their community, return home, and rebuild. And so if we go to the next slide, rebuilding resiliently is really about turning recovery into an opportunity to build back better and smarter. When homes are designed or upgraded with resilience in mind, they are better able to withstand future hazards, which directly improve the safety for families and reduce the likelihood of repeated damage in future disasters. These upgrades often go hand in hand with energy efficient improvements, which can make homes more safe while also reducing energy use. Over time, resilient construction and retrofits can also help to reduce your utility costs, and also not just fire, but extreme heat and wind, so can help in those factors as well. On a broader level, when the entire community really rebuilds resiliently, it makes the entire community safer and it reduces the collective risk of additional, a larger scale of damage. In this way, resilient rebuilding is not just about individual homes, but it's also about creating a safer, more stable, and more sustainable neighborhood overall. And so as we transition into the resilient rebuilding requirements, it's important to recognize that rebuilding after disaster is not just about restoring what is lost, but also ensuring homes and communities are better prepared for future events. And so there are a set of requirements that have been outlined from the state as well as local agencies to really ensure that when you are rebuilding, you're rebuilding to a certain standard, a certain level of safety and durability. And so we'll go through those. And it really shifted it. We're glad that these laws are in place because it really ensures that we are being proactive in building to withstand the future disasters that could happen. And so we're going to start with a poll here. And it really just is a question of, is your property located in a high fire zone? So if we go to the next slide. we go to the next slide. So if you could take the poll here, it says, is your property located in a high fire zone? And it's just yes, no, or if you're unsure, that's okay. We'll drop a link in the chat to the CAL FIRE website. If you are located in a high fire zone, the requirements for you rebuilding are different. And so we just want to understand, who's in the room and how how we move forward with the discussion. So if you could take the time. Oh, we're seeing some difficulty with the poll. Let me see if I can see it on my side. We're having some difficulty with the poll. And so we'll go ahead and move past that poll. You can go ahead to the next question. To the next slide. Sorry about that, you guys. But we were asking that question to really understand if, where you guys are located in the, on the fire map so that we can inform the discussion today. High fire hazard zones are areas where wildfires are more likely to start and spread rapidly due to a combination of environmental conditions. These designations are based on how fire behaves in specific landscape and can really help to identify the highest risk, and especially in places where there is a lot of natural vegetation. One of the biggest drivers of fire risk is vegetation, which is considered fuel. So there are a number of risks: is vegetation, weather, typology, and the history. And so the vegetation that fuel is really the dry grass, it's the bush, it's that dense vegetation that can easily ignite and allows the fire to spread very quickly. When there is more fuel available, the fire tends to move more quickly and more intense. The second there is weather condition. And so when there are really strong winds or when it's super dry outside, this can create a really ideal condition for fire to ignite and for it to spread really far distances and spread to other neighborhoods as well. Third, we have typology. So if there are really those canyon areas, those slope areas, this allows the fire to move very quickly and can move uphill. And so these geographic features can really create a funnel, and it really intensifies the speed in which the fire spreads. And then finally, a history of fire in the community is a determining factor on how CAL FIRE really determines if your home is located in a high fire zone area. And so many homes located in the Pacific Palisades area, if we go to the next slide, are considered to be located in the high or very high hazard severity zones, which means they face an elevated risk due to the vegetation and being in the hillside and the weather conditions. In Altadena, not every home is considered high risk. Only certain homes that are in the high fire zone areas, but we do know how the fire moved last year, that it's very hard to identify what's considered a high zone area. And even if your home is not currently identified by CAL FIRE as high fire, it's very important to rebuild with fire resilient standards. And so again, we know that conditions will change, and because climate change is fueling a lot of the shifts in how frequently we have wildfires in our communities, very important to think about wildfire resistant standards as you're rebuilding. Santa Ana winds, we talked about weather conditions really contribute to how the fires spread in Los Angeles County in Southern California. In the Northern California area, they have the Diablo winds. In Southern California, we have the Santa Ana winds, which really travel in a southwest direction towards the coast. And these winds carry the embers really, really far distances and make it very hard to contain the fire. And just it allows it to spread very quickly. And so the areas that are very exposed to these Santa Ana winds include the San Fernando Valley, the San Gabriel Valley, and communities that are really located at the foothills, the canyons, and those passover areas. They are especially vulnerable to these wind events. We go to the next slide. We had another poll scheduled here. And so I'll just have it be a question that you can think about. What resilience strategy are you most interested in learning about today? Is it community resilience planning? So how can I work with my neighbors as we are, both rebuilding our homes to incorporate these standards so that we can move as a community in responding to fire resistance? It's a defensible space. Is it, fire resistant roofs, vents, and windows? And I'll let you all think about that for a couple of moments before we move to the next slide. And so we can go ahead and go to the next slide here. And so this slide essentially is laying out the key building requirements that really shape how homes are rebuilt in California, especially after a disaster. The first is the California Residential Code, or the CRC. It is the primary set of rules that really governs how single-family homes, duplexes, and small residential buildings are constructed. For most homeowners, this is the main code that your contractor will be working under, and it sets the baseline standard for safe and compliant residential rebuilding. The second is the California Energy Code, also known as Title 24. This really focuses on energy efficiency in both new construction as well as a rebuild. And it covers things like insulation, windows, heating, cooling systems, and overall energy use in the home. While it is a regulatory requirement, it's also practical, and it helps to reduce the utility bills over time. And third, we have the California Wildland Urban Interface, or the WUI code. That is so hard to say, so I'm going to try to say that correctly as we go throughout the webinar. But it's for homes that are located in the high fire hazard zones. They are required to rebuild using fire-resistant materials and construction methods. So again, if your home is located in that high fire zone, you have this third set that you have to, by law, build to. And these standards are really designed to reduce the likelihood, again, of the ignition of fire going forward. And so if we go to the next slide, we're going to outline the specifics of the code. We're going to start with roofing and gutters. And so these are what is actually outlined in the WUI code. So if we go to the next slide, so we have roofing and gutters are one of the most critical parts of wildfire resilience, because roofs are highly vulnerable to embers that can land and they can accumulate and ignite. And so it's important that you think about the materials that are used as well as the way that the roof is actually designed. And so a Class A roof is the type of roof you want to include in your new design. And it's the highest level of protection against fire exposure. Additionally, if you choose a simpler roof design, that also helps to reduce fire risk. And because those embers collect in like those really intricate details, like a valley or an edge. And so if you choose a simpler design, that is better. We're going to have speakers later on in the session that are going to go deeper into the types of materials for the roof, but want to highlight that it's very important to think about a Class A roof, as well as the seals, and making sure that you are using non-combustible material to really make sure there are no gaps, and filling up those gaps, and using bird stops to prevent the embers from entering into those vulnerable openings within the roof. And then gutters. It's really, really important to use non-combustible gutters and regularly clean out the gutters, and making sure that those materials are not gathering, because they can easily become dry and become a place of fire where it can start and ignite during a wildfire event and spread to the roof. The next area that is required under the law are chimneys and vents. And so these areas are particularly important because they have direct openings into the home. And so an ember can travel through the chimney and go into the attic or interior spaces of the home. and start the fire from the inside. Even a small ember is enough to ignite and make the home vulnerable to the fire, which is why it's very important to protect these critical openings. For chimneys, it's important to install spark um, arresters made of corrosion-resistant materials. Um, and these really help to prevent, again, the embers from entering into the chimney and reduce the spread of the fire throughout. For the vents, similar to that you would do for the gaps, you want to install vents to make sure that those embers are not entering in to the home. Next, we have windows and siding. They play a huge role as well. Fire is spread from the embers traveling as well as from radiant heat. And so it's important to install windows with multiple panes that have the tempered glass that can significantly improve how the home is responding in the fire. When it's a really, really high, the heat can break the glass very easily. But if you have those multiple panes, the windows are less likely to break, and then the fire entering into the home. So important to rebuild with multiple panes that really can protect against the spread of the fire. Additionally, with the siding and the decking, using non-combustible materials to reduce how quickly the fire can spread if it is approaching the homes. And so these are really designed to slow the spread of the fire. And so if we go to the next slide, defensible space. And so this may be a term that you are familiar with or have heard as you are navigating the rebuilding process, but it's really the space around your home, the landscape space around your home. And so as the fire is approaching the home, it's important to create a defensible space. So it's like your exterior protection is a key part of the code and creates a buffer between the home and the surrounding vegetation. Under the code, there are 3 zones. So you have zone 0, which is the area from 0 to 5 feet. And the goal here is the goal here is to ensure that it is completely clear of vegetation and any materials that can be combustible. And this is the first line of defense. So if you see in the graphic there, that is the light green zone. So the light is green, it's all green, but the lightest of the greens. And so making sure that there is no vegetation that is close to the home, because if that catches fire, it will easily jump to the home. Then you have zone 1, which is from 5 to 30 feet. So it's important to keep this very clean and making sure you're regularly removing any dead plants, you're trimming your vegetation very well. You are making sure that, you're avoiding any, buildup that is close to the home. The goal really here, again, is making sure things cannot jump from the vegetation to the home. Then you have zone 3, which is 30 to 100 feet. And this really focuses on the exterior area of your home. And I will note that this is 100 feet or to the property line. So if you have a property line that is a little bit shorter, it's not to the 100 feet. But if you have a larger property line, the goal is to create a defensible space up to 100 feet from your home. And it's doing the similar things as the upper zone and making sure that the vegetation is gone on a regular basis, that you are spreading out trees and really creating a defensible space. And again, we're going to have a number of speakers today that are going to focus on what types of plants you should be, using outside your home to create the best buffer zone to make sure that the fire is not going to be spreading. We go to the next one. And so ongoing maintenance is just as important as creating that buffer zone. And so it's important that you are regularly cleaning up leaves, not only in your yard, but again, on your roof, your gutters, your deck, reducing the amount of material that is outside that could potentially ignite. It's also very important, think about what is being stored outside. And so if there is a high, wind event happening, removing your exterior patio furniture, moving that inside, because those can easily ignite, umbrellas and things like that, moving those inside so that they are not igniting the fire. If you have any firewood that you are storing outside, keeping that 30 feet from the home. Think about propane tanks, making sure that you are keeping, a good defensible space and keeping the exterior of your property regularly cleaned and maintained is very important. If we go to the next slide. So if you joined us for our session, I'm sorry, I need some water. So if you joined us for our session on financing, we went through the estimated cost for rebuilding a home. And so I wanted to share this slide again that really, we have a line here for resilient upgrades. And so as you are building out your budget, it's important to set aside around 2 to 5% of your total cost to support with the making these upgrades. They may seem like a large expense right now, but it's very important to include them because they will help the long-term affordability and stability of your home and durability. Additionally, it can help you reduce your insurance costs as you go to renew your insurance plans. I will flag that some insurance providers are also covering these fire-resistant upgrades. And so as you are working with your insurance company and working through the claim process, seeing if they do cover those the fire-resistant upgrades as well. In last session, we were joined by Villa Homes, which is one of many prefabricated and manufactured home providers. Now I wanted to just reshare this slide. They shared it last session, but a lot of the prefabricated options that are currently being presented by these organizations have those wildfire resilience standards built into the model. So they already have the Class A, they have the roof, they have the vents. They are built to these standards, and not only are they a more cost-efficient option, not only are they quicker potentially for permitting times, but they also have really, really high fire resilience standards, and you don't have to think about an additional line of your budget to incorporate those standards. And so I wanted to reshare this slide. Again, if you're interested in rewatching that recording, we will share that in the email recap. I wanted to share this slide as well. We go to the next slide. On this slide, we've gone through what's actually required by law, but want to just also highlight some additional upgrades that some homeowners are thinking about. And so one is the sprinkler systems. And so in this image here is a sprinkler system that helps you would turn it on during a wildfire event. And it's a suppression system that really helps to reduce the fire from spreading, as well as some other smart monitoring or early detection firing tools. There are a lot of these types of technologies on the market that provide real-time updates that alert you to smoke, heat, or things like that, and give you an early warning and more time to respond and evacuate. And some homeowners are choosing to use these methods. Again, while they are not mandatory, these upgrades are a proactive approach to preparedness and can help you with reducing risk and improving your overall home resilience. And so if we go to the next slide, wildfire resilience is strongest when neighbors are really acting together, because fire risk, as we know, does not stop at the property line. If one home is well prepared with clearing the vegetation and debris, or it really helps to reduce the risk for the entire community. And so if you have the opportunity to coordinate with your neighbors and create a more collective defensible space across property lines, this really does help to strengthen the community overall. And I know some of our speakers are going to be speaking about this as well. And so I am at the end of my segment, but I'll be turning it over to our first guest speaker, who is from the Global Emergency Relief, Recovery, and Reconstruction Organization, who will be speaking more about a defensible space and what their organization is doing to support recovery in Altadena. So now I will turn it over to you, and you can share your screen whenever you like.
Right, perfect. Let me know if I'm not a frequent Zoom user, so let me know if you can see my
Yes,
screen.
we can see. Thank you.
Okay, amazing. So my name's Callie Bilgram. I'm with, as you noted, Global Emergency Relief, Recovery, and Reconstruction. And just a little bit about us, we are a 501(c)(3) based in the US, but we do support communities across the world going through different types of disasters. So we're in Ukraine supporting during the conflict there. And we're also right now in Jamaica doing cash for work for out of work fishermen, clearing debris after the hurricane there that hit a few months back. So we kind of fit the greatest needs of the community with our response. We're a fully LA based team. So far in Altadena, we've hardened 61 homes to a higher wildfire standard in one community center. I'll talk more about what I mean by IBHS base level certification. 7 of our homes have been certified. But so far, we've been supporting existing homes. So as all you folks start to rebuild and hopefully rebuild back better, as Dominique just mentioned, it's also really important that the entire community comes together for resilience. So we've spent the last year advocating for and hardening homes within the Altadena community. We also had a gravel grant. It was modeled after the Rebuild Paradise Foundation. They also had a similar gravel grant where if homeowners cleared their own defensible space, we would then give them gravel through Stoneyard, which is a local supplier, to hardscape, kind of creating that defensible space and improving the overall resilience. We've also done quite a few wildfire resilience assessments. So taking an existing structure, hiring professionals to review every single aspect of the home and the surrounding 30 feet to see what the major kind of risks are for future wildfire events. We also have another component that I won't talk too much about here, but we are part of the remediation and testing within Altadena. So we've remediated 17 homes. Again, these are standing homes that were impacted by the fire, had high level of contaminants like lead, asbestos, and soot ash and char. And we also worked with Habitat for Humanity on some of these where we did the remediation and they did the repairs. And we have soil tested 55 lots. So that is kind of just like a little plug, not super related to resilient rebuilding, but if you are considering whether or not to have soil testing done before you start your rebuild, we really recommend it. It is a known risk in Altadena, so any kind of lack or failure to mitigate a known risk may affect you down the line. If you would like to have soil testing done, I can connect you with our person that is offering a discount as well, or you can kind of happy to talk about the importance of soil testing offline too, as kind of you need comprehensive soil testing to know how to keep the workers safe and you safe in the future during your rebuilds. So a bit more about what we've done on the resilience side. So Dominic did an amazing job overviewing like defensible space and everything that is included in this resilient rebuild. You can also do it for standing homes. So if you have neighbors or family members with standing homes that are interested in this as well, there's something called the IBHS program, which I'll show you kind of a picture of on the next slide. But there's 2 different levels of certification. You can go for a base or a plus. And it's one of the only objective measures that insurance companies will look at when you're helping to negotiate your premiums. So what we did is we hardened 61 homes and 1 community center. I don't know if anyone knows the Camp Mariposa Girl Scouts camp, but we hardened that structure as well to keep all the Girl Scouts safe for the many years to come. And so we create a defensible space, so kind of removing that vegetation from the 5 feet. You'll see in the picture on the bottom, there was like bushes and plants up against the house to start. And then we pretty much just moved everything back. We trimmed it and then created that 5 feet defensible space with like a nice brick border. A lot of folks, we know people are really attached to their plants. I am as well. There's a lot of fear that it won't look as nice, but there's definitely ways to make your house look beautiful with defensible space. You can also add non-combustible like potted plants up to like 10 kind of around if you like that aesthetic, or just kind of keeping things fully away from the house. So we also installed ember resistant mesh over all the vents. If a home did have wood siding, we would place 6 inches of non-combustible siding at the base. So all just about kind of reducing the chance that embers can get close to the home and catch fire. A big thing we did was replacing wooden fences, anything within 5 feet. As you do look at your rebuilding journey, if you would like a fence, it's really helpful to have either a wrought iron or some type of metal wood fence option. Anything that's close to your house, especially within that 5 feet, should not be wood or combustible. And then we did also include targeted zone 1 vegetation. So that's kind of like right past that 5 feet, just trimming things up and making sure nothing too close to the house could potentially catch fire. So as I mentioned, this is the IBHS. They're a key partner. If you'd like more information on IBHS, I highly recommend you go to their website. I'm also happy to put you in touch with them. But they have, again, this plus and base. So as you're rebuilding, I would look for the for the plus certification. The main differences are, like, for our homeowners with still standing homes, we did not, for example, like replace all of their windows. That is on the plus side of things. So we kind of focused on low cost upgrades that we could do for existing homes. But if you see in blue on this side of the screen, those are the additional requirements for plus. So as Dominique mentioned as well, like, your windows are really important, making sure you have the Class A roof. Any gutters that you have should be not only a non-combustible material, but also covered. So the whole point of this program is, embers are the most common causes of homes catching fire during a wildfire, especially under high winds. So the whole point of this is just to kind of reduce your ember ignition risk. And also, one of the fire chiefs that I first worked with on this said an amazing quote that, wildfires are abstract, but insurance is annual. So hopefully there's not a wildfire for a very, very long time again in Altadena, but the importance of having these wildfire mitigation measures, you will see annually in your insurance premium. So by getting the certification, it also will hopefully translate to a reduction in insurance premiums. My last slide is just on a little bit, showed one more picture of the defensible space here. This homeowner really was happy with, they had quite a lot of greenery and shrubs near their home. We pushed kind of everything back out of the defensible space. It is the most important thing that you can do. So if you take anything else kind of away from this, really having that defensible space will really improve the resilience of your home moving forward. The other is the mesh. There's tons of different brands. There is one, I'm not selling them at all. The one we use is called Wildfire Defense Mesh. They just have a very, fitting name. But really, if you have a mesh that is, of course, non-combustible, and if you're confused about the inches or the size, as long as you can't put a golf tee through it, then usually it's small enough. It's all just kind of reducing the chance of large embers flying through. So there's tons of different varieties of mesh, but the mesh is an easy thing to cover your vents with. And the last thing is the fencing. We chose to use wrought iron. You can add a privacy screen, such as you see here in this far left picture. Like, this is also a great example. This home did not get certified because their 5 feet has their neighbors right next door. So that's also something to consider. Urban density is a concern here with how closely people are to your 5 feet. But replacing it with a wrought iron or metal fence option, MWF is one that we use, but there's tons out there. If you like the wood look, you can use one with like a metal wood. So lots of options for fire resistant or, mitigative building materials as you think about your rebuild. And hopefully we've helped some of your neighbors also get to a higher resilience standard. And as everyone rebuilds, it's a more resilient Altadena. So that is it from me. So I'm going to stop sharing. Welcome any questions now, or I can also drop my email in the chat if anyone would like to follow up.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing that information. The images are very good to see it in illustration. So thank you. If anyone has any questions, you can put them into the chat. And I'll start with a softer question, but what gives you hope as you support wildfire recovery and the rebuilding efforts or resiliency across California?
That's a great question. I feel like it's in a really exciting time, which sounds awful in the wake of the biggest fire we've seen, but there is so much good momentum within the state government and legislature to really push forward a lot of these amazing initiatives to hopefully also help folks with resilience. Mega Fire Action is putting forth a bill, I think today, to offer state subsidies and loans and things to support kind of the resilience journey across the state, so that hopefully, as a community, we can all come together and support our wildfire risk, because it really is a shared ecosystem of risk that we're all kind of encountering together. So yeah, it gives me hope. I see a lot of amazing community leaders and residents coming together to kind of support each other, because as you said, it can't really be done in isolation. Every time you have a neighbor improve the resilience of their land and structure, it helps everyone around them.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you so much for joining us. Now we're going to move to our next speaker, who is, hello, how are you doing, Ben? He is joining us from the US GBC, California. And they're going to be speaking about their new that was just published in a few of the standards that are outlined in there. So I'll turn it over to you then.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay,
Yes,
Dominique?
we can.
Oh, oh, perfect. I stepped out of an event here today to make sure we did this, and this is important work. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if everything looks okay on your end. No, it's loading. It's loading. It's thinking about it. All right, we
Yes.
made it. We made it.
Mhm.
Fantastic. Well, hello everyone. My name is Ben Stapleton. I'm the CEO of the U.S. Green Building Council of California. Really excited to be here today. We've been working with Enterprise for years, and they're really a great partner, as well as the County of LA on a lot of wildfire recovery efforts. And our vision for the future is fairly simple. It's really just transforming California into a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable place for all. My hope is that everyone can really get behind that shared vision, and we do that through really what I like to call action. So, and that's by leading, educating, connecting, and advocating in the face of the changing climate, in the face of increased needs around resilience and things like raising energy costs and challenges with affordable housing, all the things, we really want to help create the change to create a more sustainable society going forward. We have 10 regions across the state, which you see here on the left. And part of the reason those are important is all these regions experience fire in different ways. And we've been doing training across the state on how to reduce wildfire risk. But in the wake of these fires we experienced in LA last year, we had community leaders step up and come to us who are experts in a lot of these topics across the state to help us think about how could we rebuild more sustainably. And many of them contributed to the guide I'm going to share with you today, which was really just a great experience to have that kind of effort. Last year, we engaged with over 11,000 Californians, and most of them here in the LA area, around resilience, around how to rebuild. We have a rebuilding guide, which I'll share with you in a moment, but we also go out and we do community events and workshops, typically about once a month, really in the community. We have rebuild training that we do with a certificate for contractors in English and Spanish. And really to get that kind of feedback, to hear how the tone has changed, how people's needs have changed over the last year, has really informed a lot of our work and how we continue to evolve the work we do going forward. And I just, I think we're all aware of this, but uh, the trends for wildfires have continued to increase. They're only going to continue to increase. I speak at a fair amount of events, and I usually ask people who here has a family member, a friend, or themselves who's been touched by wildfire in the past years. And I used to get two or three people in the back of the room that raise their hand. And now when I say this, literally you get 90% of the room that really raises their hand. And so we've been doing this work since 2018, 2019 in the wake of the Thomas and Woolsey fires, which really hit a lot of the Ventura community, and really learned how ill-prepared we were for trauma, how long rebuilding takes. That also led me on a journey. I realized how many things we could do that are low cost, no cost to reduce fire risk. And so we kept diving in deeper. We launched a tours program of hardened homes and properties. We launched a wildfire defense toolkit. In 2022, we were able to finally get some funding to start doing training on a regular basis for contractors and landscapers on how to reduce that risk. And so we continue to evolve that program and push that out. And when these fires hit in LA last year, we looked to see how can we take that content, this network of expertise we developed, and really help focus that on the rebuilding efforts. And so we do matchmaking with resources and professionals. We have a professional directory I'll share with you here in a moment. If you're looking to find a contractor who can help you, who's been through our classes on reducing your wildfire risk. We also update our home hardening and defensible space toolkit annually. And I'll share more with the guide with you here in a moment. We also offer training at least once a month, typically at least twice a month at no cost in English and Spanish on some of these things. So you'll see on May 14th, which is actually this Thursday, we're having a wildfire defense for construction professionals via Zoom. There's a test you can take at the end to get a certificate. You can add that to your resume. And if you're a contractor, we try to help you learn how to help promote that. And I also want to mention we have a training coming up next week around extreme heat. This is all around resilience, right? There's things contractors can do to protect themselves and also reduce heat impacts on the properties that they're working on. And we just finished recruiting our class for the first half of the year, but just want to socialize. We will be recruiting defensible space ambassadors in the second half of the year. We're doing this work in the San Gabriel River watershed. So looking for folks who can easily get to East LA, North Orange County, who can help support this work and do home assessments, do community workshops. Our application will open up here shortly for the second cohort of this year that will start in the fall. So feel free to check that out if it's relevant for you or someone that you may know. And so the rebuilding guide that we launched last year, we really tried to take all the information that was out there, synthesize that. I wanted something that was comprehensive, if we wanted to be comprehensive, but yes, also understandable. And we're actually releasing an updated version at the end of this month that will include incentives. There's been a lot of incentives in release since then. We've also gotten feedback on different areas of the guide, and we wanted to update those. So in the guide, we cover key concepts around fire and around home building. We cover placement, envelope design, landscape, which is there's a lot of depth to that conversation, and also accessory structures. We cover building systems, green innovation, meaning new types of building approaches there, and things to help reduce community risk. So in the guide, when you and you can obviously find that on our website. We also try to really provide the co-benefits. So looking at savings, whether that's energy savings, whether that's material costs, labor costs, what things are safer. So yes, we're talking about wildfire here, but what about earthquakes? What about mudslides? What about other issues, power outages, things that we need to be worried about. And obviously, we're a green building organization. What's more sustainable? How can we help drive that? And so this guide is for homeowners, but also for designers and contractors. Again, it should be able to help anyone who's really looking at this process, and really helps provide a lot of context. So it sounds like this was covered a little bit earlier. I won't get into this as much, but most of our fires that come in that intersection between the wildland and urban interface is really from ember-driven fire. But the fires that we had in LA last year very quickly became an urban fire, which is driven by other types of issues like radiant heat and like direct flame. And it's so important that we need to create the cultural change amidst our society to help reduce that risk. How do we work together with our community? How do we educate and support our neighbors if there's vegetation that needs to be maintained or cleared? Talk to them about it. How do we educate each other? This is the kind of cultural change I think we need to see more so going forward. And so we look at roofs as an example, really choosing a non-combustible or fire-treated insulation for your roof. Talking about metal drip edges and flashing, things that are going to prevent those embers from catching, prevent, that start of ignition. We talk about different kinds of green insulation options, fiberglass, mineral wool, what's best, what's most affordable, what has the lowest carbon emissions in manufacturing, like fire-treated natural fibers that are recycled fibers from denim or other materials. So we talk about those co-benefits. Landscape, there was a conversation earlier. We've had a lot of debate around that first 5 feet in the LA area over the last year. As someone who really believes we need to invest in our biodiversity and reduce heat, I think there's a lot of things that we can do to have, really low to the ground plant life, outside of probably that first 12 to 18 inches of the home that is well irrigated, well maintained, that can be native and can really help support our local biodiversity and reduce heat. Mature trees. I was on the Blue Ribbon Commission. I guess I still am on the Blue Ribbon Commission for LA County, who helped advise on a lot of the changes and recommendations for the county on rebuilding. And we want to really recommend we keep mature trees in that zone as a way to help protect our homes and reduce heat. But looking at what kind of vegetation you're putting in space, I think when we talk about vegetation, especially in these types of environments, we talk too much about what we're going to take away. We're taking away vegetation. We don't talk about how we actually create a beautiful landscape that is native, that's supporting biodiversity, that's using less water, that's providing shade, creating a beautiful environment. Let's share visions of that because we know it's possible rather than talk about what we're taking away. And so we do that in our guide. There's some areas you can dive into in the guide to learn more about that and learn more about how to maintain those plants. Building systems. We do a lot of these workshops. I'm amazed about how many questions I get around electrification. That literally more than half the questions I get, probably electrification. Also get a lot of questions around landscape, but talking to probably several thousand people over the last year and a half around this issue, those are the big chunks of questions we get. So we talk a lot about, if you're building a new home from scratch, you should be able to do that at cost parity to building a home that's all gas based. It should not be a price premium. And there's a lot of contractors that need more education still around all electric devices. And so they tend to price all electric as a premium. And so if you are getting back premium pricing on rebuilding versus gas, there's a note there. There's an opportunity to maybe go look at different contractors, have the opportunity to push back a little bit when you're removing gas from the home. You're also removing a lot of the piping for that gas. You're removing that connection from the street to the home. Those things should all save costs. Yes, a lot of the electric appliances are more expensive up front, but they are much more efficient and will cost less over time and have less volatility in their rates. So we talk about induction cooking, we talk about heat pump, water heaters and HVAC in here, battery and solar and how to pair those things. We also talk about that shared energy resilience. We have some communities that are looking at microgrids right now, community resilience hubs. We've worked on hubs here in the city. What are the benefits of these things? How can they interact with you and your community? These are just helpful things to be aware of. We're also big believers in shared purchasing power, and so we launched a purchasing platform that'll automatically match similar purchases and similar geography and timing with each other. We white labeled this from a company called Building Ease, but we really want to create access for everyone to these lower cost materials. There's a QR code there you can scan to access the hub itself and that platform. But the goal is we're trying to connect those dots to help folks access some more sustainable materials, more resilient materials at lower cost. Also, I mentioned some of our wildfire defense training, other training. There's a QR code there you can scan and get access to that training. Again, we offer that for free, at least once or twice a month, and I hope you can check that out. Our professional directory, as I mentioned, we've got professionals who've been through our training. So if you're looking to harden your home, looking to find someone who's been through one of our classes, you can find them from going to our professional directory. There's some checkboxes you can click there on the left-hand side to find someone who fits your needs. And now we have at least, I think at this point, we're up to probably at least 70 folks in the directory who are wildfire certified. So the last thing I really wanted to share with you, I took this picture in the mountains above Altadena, literally 2-3 days before the fires last year. Every New Year's, I go for a hike, think about all the things I did wrong in the year before and things I could do better in the year ahead. And this picture actually gives me a lot of hope. This area burned, is not accessible right now. I hope these trees will grow back this way, but I believe this view will exist again. I believe it's possible for us to build homes that are more wildfire resilient, to build landscapes that are more wildfire resilient. We know how to do it. We can do it today. As you probably heard from previous speakers, the cost parity to build to an IBHS standard from what you would build from new code, we're talking about maybe 25, 30 grand at most. And it's very doable. And so I have this vision for our society in the future where we have fires. Yes, maybe we evacuate for several days. Maybe our landscape burns. We come back. Our landscape regrows in 6 to 12 months. Our homes didn't burn because they've been designed in a way where those embers aren't going to catch and the fire can blow through. And I do think that's possible. And I think it's a vision we got to reach for because fire's not going to go away. But if we can get to a place where fires may come every 10 to 20 years and we prepared our homes, prepared our communities, we can adapt to that changing environment. And I do believe that's possible for all of us. That's kind of the vision I'm fighting for, is this vision right here across a shining city with all the life around us. With that, the last thing I was going to leave you with, we have our big annual conference in Berkeley this year, May 27th and 28th, if anyone can make it up there. We have a wildfire rebuilding and recovery track for that conference. We'll have a bunch of folks exhibiting there raw materials to make your home more sustainable and more resilient. And I just ask you to please stay connected, and if we can help in any way, please let us know. Happy to put my contact information in chat as well. So thank you for the time today, Dominique.
Well, thank you for joining us and sharing the guide. I dropped the guide in the chat for anyone that wants to access, and we will definitely follow up with Ben's contact if you would like to reach out to him directly. We'll now open it up to questions. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function. I will start just with one question on the new group purchasing portal and seeing if there are costs for the homeowner to sign up for that portal or completely free? No, yeah.
No, it's completely free, and there is like a small percentage that the project will go back to the platform that comes from the contractor side, and the contractor, the manufacturer side, and they can set thresholds for how many units need to get purchased before things hit discounts, and the manufacturers have pages that cover them. There's also a lot of opportunity to put transparency uploads in there around those materials. So the platform's got some pretty good information there around that.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I've seen some other platforms, but I think they've all had a cost associated with them. So it's fantastic that there is no cost there. And are there any so for someone that is on a limited budget, any upgrade that you tend to think has the greatest impact?
Honestly, I think, in my opinion, maintenance and the grates and some of the things that were mentioned earlier are those
Mhm.
things that can be low cost, no cost. Just making sure your landscape is well irrigated, well maintained. You're clearing your gutters out of leaves. You're putting up the
Mhm.
grates around your beds. You're looking strategically around your house, making sure your deck doesn't have openings where embers are going to blow through and get caught. Those are those things that, it takes time, energy, and effort, but doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. And the data shows that reduces the risk. Each thing you do reduces the risk by a
Yeah.
percentage, right? And we're just playing a
Mhm.
game of percentages here, right? At the end of the day. I myself live in a 1913 house in Pasadena. I was evacuated for 5, 6 days from the fire, and so there's certain things I'm trying to do at my house to improve one thing at a time. But it's real tough, right? I've got wooden siding on my house. I can't, if I was to replace all that, we're talking about a very
Yeah.
significant cost. So, but the things I can do is maintain my yard, clear extra brush where I can, make sure I'm looking at my vents and the eaves. And so those are things I encourage everyone to do.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time and joining us today. You are a great partner, and we appreciate all the opportunities that you sent to us to share this information with the community.
Thank you. Yeah, really happy to be here and always happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we're going to turn it over to MPHS, who is another great partner of ours, and they're going to be highlighting some of the financing opportunities that they have to homeowners to make those resilient upgrades. And so I'll now turn it over to Mel to share more about the financing program.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dominique, and my fellow panelists. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay.
can
Can you
hear
see
you.
my
Mhm.
slides? So
Yeah.
here we go. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mel D. McCauley, and I serve as Director of Community Lending and Investment at Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services, NPHS. We have already heard today about your fire resilient rebuilding how it matters, what California requires, and what a safer home can look like. We've talked about roofs, vents, windows, defensible space, and of course, the community level action. My part is really about the next question. Once a homeowner understands what needs to be done, how do they actually pay for it? And I want to be clear at the start, this is not a sales presentation. This is a financing conversation. The question is not simply whether a loan exists. The question is whether the financial system is part to help families act before risk becomes loss. Because resilience only works when it is reachable. A safer roof, ember resistant vents, defensible space, and better materials are not just technical upgrades. For many families, they are financial decisions. And for lower income families and homeowners, also seniors, and other folks in our communities, they already feel under pressure. That decision can become the difference between staying protected, staying insured, or being pushed further into instability. About NPHS. So, NPHS exists in that space between housing, finance, and community resilience. Our mission is to build thriving communities through housing and financial solutions and support underserved families. We also help with revitalizing neighborhoods, strengthen local economic opportunity, which is not separate from today's topic. I would have to say that is exactly today's topic. We are a nonprofit community development organization, a certified CDFI, a HUD approved housing counseling agency. Our work sits across four affordable housing areas, which is affordable housing development, community lending, financial and homeownership education, and policy and research. That combination matters because wildfire recovery is not only a construction problem, it is also a household finance problem. It is an insurance problem, it is a displacement problem, and a neighborhood stability problem. That is the perspective NPHS brings into this conversation. We are looking at a home, but we are also looking at the household. We are looking at the repair. We are also looking at affordability. We are looking at recovery, but we are also asking how we can avoid repeating the same risk again. So here are the problems. The basic one is California's affordability crisis pushed many families farther away from the urban core and deeper into areas where wildfire risk is higher. At the same time, wildfire losses are putting pressure on insurance markets. Families are seeing higher premiums, stricter underwriting, and in some cases, notices requiring specific corrective action. And then comes the hardest part. There are still too few financing options designed specifically for home hardening. In lending terms, this is a mismatch problem. The risk is immediate, but the available capital is often too slow, too expensive, or not designed for the specific work that is being required. A family may need a few $1,000s to correct an insurance issue. Another family may need tens of thousands of dollars to complete meaningful mitigation. Another may be rebuilding after a disaster and trying to bridge the gap between rebuilding normally to safer standards. The market often treats these situations as the same, but they are not the same. That gap matters because when a homeowner cannot afford the upgrade, the risk does not disappear. It stays on the property. It stays in the neighborhood, and eventually it becomes a community-wide problem. Some solutions that we offer. Our approach is built around 3 words: partnerships, incentives, and mitigation. Partnerships because no single organization can solve this alone. We need public agencies, CDFIs, insurers, contractors, technical experts, and community-based organizations aligned around the same outcome. Incentives because homeowners need a reason and pathway to act before the next disaster, not just after it. And mitigation because the goal is not only to finance repairs, the goal is to reduce future risk. This is where the CDFI role becomes important. CDFIs, or community development financial institutions, are built to finance gaps that traditional markets do not address well. In this case, the gap is not just affordability, it is timing access, underwriting flexibility, and the need to connect capital with proven resilience standards. But we also have to be disciplined. Not every repair should become a debt. Not every borrower should be pushed into a loan. The right model has to combine grants, affordable financing, education, and verified mitigation standards so that the capital actually reduces risk. That is the difference between simply lending money and building a resilience finance model. On resilience loans. Think of these not as 3 products, but as 3 moments in a homeowner's resilience journey. One moment is urgent. I received a notice and need to act. One moment is preventive. I know my home is vulnerable and I want to harden it. One moment is transformational. I am rebuilding and I have one chance to rebuild safer. That is how we are thinking about resilience now, resilience, and resilience rebuild. Resilience now is immediate assistance for homeowners who may be facing insurance concerns, notices from carriers, or similar corrective work that needs to happen quickly. Resilience is for more substantial retrofit projects. This is where homeowner is trying to move toward a recognized standard, such as, we've spoken at length here, the IBHS Wildfire Prepared designation. Resilience rebuild is for larger rebuild situations, including ground-up construction, manufactured housing, multifamily or single-family homes, where the question becomes, can we rebuild in a way that does not recreate the same vulnerability? The common thread is this: resilience has to be reachable. Some common scenarios. Well, let's go ahead and make this real. A homeowner receives a letter from their insurance carrier. Maybe it identifies vegetation, fence, roofing, fencing, or another condition that must be corrected. The homeowner wants to comply. They are not ignoring the risk. They are not being careless. They do not have the cash sitting there to fix it. So what happens? They may be pushed toward a HELOC or a reverse mortgage, a cash out refinance in a volatile rate environment, or a higher interest personal loan. For many families, those options are either too expensive, it could be too slow, or not available at all. And from a policy standpoint, that is a problem. We have identified the risk, we have identified the work, but then the household does not have a practical bridge between the two. That is the gap Resilience Now is trying to address. Smaller, faster capital for immediate corrective action before a household loses coverage or faces a major premium shock. On Resilience Now. Resilience Now is structured as a smaller second lien. It's a loan concept for urgent corrective work. The draft terms here show a loan amount that ranges from $5,000 to $10,000 in a 5-year term. A target interest rate, minimum credit score, and an education requirement tied to resiliency and community hardening. The important point is not just the loan size, it's the purpose. In CDFI lending, right sizing matters. A small problem should not force the homeowner into a large refinance. If the issue is targeted, the financing should be targeted. This is not meant to finance cosmetic work. It's not meant to help a homeowner respond to one identified risk. It takes practical action to make the homeowner stay on the path towards stability. And because this is a CDFI model, education is part of the product. The financing should not stand alone. A homeowner should understand what is being repaired, why it matters, and how that repair fits into the broader home hardening strategy. Some common scenarios of a low to moderate income owner. Now, take a lower to moderate income homeowner. They may not have received a cancellation notice yet, but they know their home is vulnerable. They need several upgrades: vents, defensible space, maybe siding, maybe windows, or maybe roof related work. They face the same financial choices, which are cash out refinance, HELOC, personal loan, or delay. And delay is the most common outcome. But delay has a cost. The home remains exposed, the neighborhood remains exposed, and the next wildfire season does not wait for a household to become financially ready. This is where we have to stop thinking about home hardening as a luxury upgrade. In many communities, it is becoming a housing stability intervention. Because if a homeowner cannot afford to reduce risk, they may eventually be unable to afford the insurance, the repairs, or the cost of staying in the home at all. So on resilience, our resilience concept is for larger retrofit work. The terms shown here are designated around projects up to $50,000, with a second lien structure, longer term, and pricing concept that can step down as a homeowner reaches wildfire preparedness milestones. The goal is to align the financing within the outcome. The underwriting question is not only can the borrower repay? Well, that still matters. We have to protect the borrower, the organization, and the capital. But the second question is, does this improvement risk to the home, the household, and the surrounding community? That is where resilience lending becomes different from ordinary consumer debt. A family should not be punished financially for making their home safer. If a homeowner invests in verified mitigation, there should be the pathway for that investment to translate into better risk positioning and potentially insurance-related benefits where available. And I want to frame that carefully. No one should promise a universal premium reduction. Insurance outcomes can vary by carrier, policy, property condition, and market factors. But the direction is clear. Public policy, insurance regulation, and resilience standards are moving toward recognizing meaningful mitigation. So, in a common scenario with the rebuild gap, let's look at the rebuild scenario. A homeowner loses a home in a wildfire. They may have insurance proceeds, disaster assistance, or other capital to rebuild, but the amount available may be enough to rebuild the basic structure, not necessarily enough to rebuild to a stronger, resilient standard. That creates a difficult decision. Do they rebuild quickly and affordably, but with the many same vulnerabilities, or do they try to reach a higher standard? Or if there is a financing gap? That is the uncomfortable truth in disaster recovery. Rebuilding is not automatically resilience. A rebuilt home can still be unprepared if the financing only restores what was lost and does not help address what made the loss so severe. From a community standpoint, this is one of the most important moments because rebuilding after a disaster is not only about recovery, it is a once in a generation chance to reduce the risk profile of an entire neighborhood. For our resilience rebuild, our concept looks at larger financing needs up to 100,000 for homeowners and potentially multifamily properties trying to rebuild towards IBHS wildfire prepared pathway or a similar resilience target. Again, the purpose is not simply to add debt. The purpose is to bridge the difference between rebuilt and rebuilt safer. That distinction, it matters because a house can be replaced and still leave the family vulnerable. A neighborhood can be rebuilt and still carry the same systemic risk. So the question is not just, can we rebuild? The question is, can we rebuild in a way that makes the next disaster less devastating? That is the purpose of this financing concept, not to sell debt, but to make safer rebuilding financially possible for families who otherwise may not have had that option. So in our partnership model, this is where the partnership becomes the engine. NPHS has received approval from the California Wildfire Mitigation Program Authority to develop a pilot partnership that can model and leverage CWMPA's grant program alongside NPHS's resilience lending product. The idea is straightforward. Grants can help recover upfront wildfire mitigation costs, and CDFI loans can extend financing for remaining or additional resilience improvements. The structure matters because grants alone may not be enough. Loans alone may not be affordable enough, but blended together, they can become more powerful. The opportunity is in the blend. Grants can reduce the burden, CDFI capital can extend the reach, technical standards can protect the quality of work, and share the intake that can make the process easier for homeowners who are already overwhelmed. That is important because in disaster recovery and mitigation, complexity itself can become a barrier. A family should not need to become an expert in grants, insurance, construction standards, and the loan products just to make their home safer. A coordinated model can help bring those pictures together. So there's the creative investment model that we have, where the next layer is the capital. If we want resilience financing to scale, we need more than one funding source. We need philanthropic capital, we need public subsidy, private investment, and a tax credit equity working together. This is where we have to move from project by project thinking to capital system thinking. If insurers, public agencies, philanthropy, and CDFIs are all affected by wildfire risk, then the financing model should allow each of them to participate in reducing that risk. One tool we are exploring is the COIN CDFI tax credit program. The broader idea is to use tax credit incentives, public subsidy, and CDFI lending capacity to attract private investment into wildfire preparedness. That matters because insurance providers are not only paying claims after disasters, they can also be part of reducing risk before disasters. A well-designed CDFI model can help turn insurance sector capital and other private capital into home hardening, safer neighborhoods, and potentially more stable communities. That is the system change we are trying to point forward. So what's next? First, we continue working with CWMPA to move the concept into pilot projects. Second, We're seeking philanthropic and government support that can build with private capital because affordability has to remain central. Third, we expand outreach to vulnerable homeowners, including seniors and households in disadvantaged communities. Fourth, we track outcomes, upgrades financed, homes hardened, designations pursued, and communities served. And finally, we keep working with partners, including CCCI members, insurers, public agencies, technical experts, all to build financial products that can scale. The larger point is simple. Resilience cannot remain a premium feature for households with cash. If we want safer communities, we want a financial system that makes safer choices reachable for the families most exposed at risk. That is one role NPHS is trying to play. Not replacing contractors, we're not replacing insurers, we're not replacing public agencies, but connecting capital, education, and community so that the trust and resilience can move from recommendation to reality. Because at the end of the day, resilience has to be reachable. And I thank you. That is my time. What are your questions?
Thank you, Mel, for the thoughtful presentation. You're always very thoughtful with how you present, and we appreciate that. If you have any questions, use the Q&A function. I do have a question because last webinar you shared the financing program for the ADUs, and so wanted to see that. Just I feel like the answer is yes, but homeowners can take advantage of both, right? The
Yes.
loan program as well as the ADU program.
Yes, and actually the program is kind of meshing together because
Okay.
there are folks that are thinking more about a larger rebuild and want an
Mhm.
ADU as a temporary solution. So
Mhm.
we are ready with the financing products, we are ready with the support, and we're ready with the partners for borrowers to when they come forward and ask about these solutions for them.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I know we are short on time. If you have any other questions, we'll send over a email and we will get those questions answered for you. Now we're going to turn it over to Araceli, who is the policy director here at Enterprise in our Southern California office, to just provide some updates on policy. If you've been joining our webinars for throughout the series, she's been doing updates on different relevant policy updates. And so would love to turn it over to her again to share any updates.
Thank you so much, Dominique. Good afternoon, everyone. As Dominique mentioned, my name is Araceli, and I lead our state and local policy work out of Enterprise's Southern California market. We at Enterprise engage on policy at all levels of government related to our housing work, but in our case, we also are engaging and tracking priorities under disaster recovery. Today, I'm going to share just a couple of updates on the federal front and state front related to federal funding that we know is really crucial for long-term recovery, including CDBGDR and FEMA. We know that these programs provide really critical assistance for communities to rebuild and recover. First, on the FEMA side of things, we know that there have been many delays and that there's a high level of need still. And so one of the things that we saw most recently was the state of California formally request an extension, a 12-month extension on the individuals and households program which is under FEMA, which provides financial and housing assistance to disaster survivors. And so this extension would allow eligible survivors to be able to continue receiving the support until July of next year. And given that there are many households who continue to face financial uncertainty related to the rebuild of their homes, this is an extension that is certainly needed and something to track. On the CDBGDR front, there are no new updates related to the funds under CDBGDR or what's been appropriated there. But I did want to flag that there is a piece of legislation called the Reforming Disaster Recovery Act, which has been one of Enterprise's top priorities that was reintroduced last month by Representative Al Green out of Texas. This bill would permanently authorize the this disaster recovery program and that is currently run by HUD. It is included in the Road to Housing Act, if that sounds familiar. But we deeply care about this, and is one key priority for enterprise, because it would help ensure that our systems are more efficient in terms of disaster recovery processes and mitigating future risks. And so it would allow HUD to be better at distributing recovery funds to affected communities, which we're seeing why that is so desperately needed right now. We'll continue to monitor these priorities at the federal level and as well as the state level. So as always, encourage folks to sign up for the enterprise newsletter so that we can continue to share out some of the updates that we're tracking on this front. Thanks, Dominique.
Okay. Thank you, Araceli, for always just keeping us updated on everything. Policy, shifts very quickly. So thank you for that. We want to also close with sharing some additional resources that our team here at Enterprise has developed. So if you go to the next slide, our Sustainable Connected Communities team developed a disaster resource guide. The guide is geared towards housing providers. So if you're any affordable housing providers on the call, really compiled a document that has a lot of online tools and resources to help affordable housing providers prepare and navigate future disasters. So I encourage you to take advantage and review that guide if it's something that you would be interested in, and we'll drop the link into the chat as well. And also, as we shared earlier, one of our partners in this work is Office of Office, and they are offering a trauma-informed rebuilding and case management. So on the next slide, we have a QR code. If you would like support with navigating the rebuilding, understanding your options, please scan and sign up to complete the intake form to start receiving that case management services. They do have space still to support additional homeowners. Also, we know that rebuilding is not only financially draining, but it's also very much so emotionally draining. And so if you or members of your family need any mental health support, we encourage you to reach out to any of the organizations on the screen. They are providing resources and services to support you all through the process right now, and to make sure that your mental health is also in a good place. And then we also wanted to share that we have an event this weekend. Enterprise Community Partners will be at the Eaton Fire Collaboratory this weekend, and we'll be holding a focus group. The focus group is going to really bring together a discussion between residents, nonprofit partners, our community leaders, to really talk about the ideals of how to create a community that has housing that is affordable for all, and making sure that Altadena is being built resiliently and supports all of the residents that were displaced. And so if you have the time, please join us this Saturday. We just dropped the link into the chat to RSVP, and we encourage you all, again, if you have the time, to join us. We would love to see you in person too. And then thank you so much for joining the webinar today. We have 2 more webinars in the series. The next one is on supporting seniors. That actually is going to be hybrid. So it's going to be in person at the Eaton Fire Collaborative as well as online. And then we're going to have the final webinar supporting our renters as well as our manufactured mobile home residents and homeowners that are working to rebuild. And so thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you continuing to join us, continuing to join the webinars and be a part of the space. We do have a feedback survey. We would love to hear your feedback on how you thought the webinar went today. We are constantly trying to improve, and so we really do value the feedback that you're able to provide. Thank you all so much for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next, either this Saturday or the next webinar. Thank you so much. And you can, if you have any other questions too, we'll stay on for a couple of minutes.